All right, we are going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Thank you everybody for joining. The topic is upgrade or start new, strategies and considerations when evaluating upgrade or replacement. We appreciate you joining us today. And the first thing I always like to do is just take a second and introduce our speakers. My name is Shana Horka and I work in product marketing here at Gimmal. And I am joined by today's key speaker, Gimmal Solution Architect, John Couvillon. Now, before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to go through. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A section on your screen. We will answer as many as we have time for at the end of the presentation. There will also be at least one poll question that you'll see pop up in a separate window, so please keep an eye out for that, and all answers are anonymous. As always, if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know so we can assist you. On the next slide, I have just a couple slides here to tell you a little bit about Gimmal and how we can help you take control of your information. Gimmal is an information governance software company founded in 2002. Our mission is to help you achieve your information governance goals by providing solutions that balance the value your information provides with the risk it also presents. Whether you're trying to discover information in unstructured data sources, migrate from legacy systems, or comply with policies across multiple repositories, Gimmal can help you achieve your goals. We have a client success team and a global network of partners that deliver solutions in conjunction with key partners like Microsoft and SAP. Gimmal's family of software products work together to let you create an efficient digital workplace. Our comprehensive solutions include migration from legacy systems, file analysis and e-discovery, electronic and physical records management, and document management for SAP. We're also excited to announce that earlier this week, we did release the ability to perform e-discovery in Microsoft Teams. But without further ado, I will hand it over to John so he can get started with today's presentation.
All right, thank you, Shana. So I'm hoping this will be helpful to anyone on the call that's, looking at evaluating, getting off the fence, making a decision with respect to whether to upgrade or to move to another system. I've compiled a number of bits and sets of information, tips and tricks, and kind of analyzing questions that can help you to get through that decision and hopefully ease the situation that you might be in. So let's start by looking at the current situation, and that's really kind of where everything starts. And in talking with our customers that are going through some of these same pains, we hear them asking the same questions over and over again. And more than that, we hear them telling us that they kind of revisit these same questions almost annually. Things like, we've got these old legacy platforms. Can't we get rid of these? What's it going to take to finally reduce the number of systems we have? We spend too much money on all of these systems. How can we reduce the costs? Why are we continuing to pay licenses and maintenance for this system? We haven't touched it in years, and maybe it's not really providing all the value that we used to get out of it at one point in time. And then lastly, questions like, we know we've got this old platform. We've got to be missing out on some of the newer functionality that's available from the modern platforms like M365 and a fully integrated platform for information management. And these, a lot of times these legacy ECM systems have become so ingrained in critical business processes, it's really hard to get out from under them. It's really hard to make that decision. It's really hard to justify it from a cost perspective because it's going to cost money to get off of those systems. However, more and more we're seeing that organizations are realizing savings and other benefits from moving off of these old on-prem proprietary older platforms to the cloud. And so, you know, it's time to kind of really put your foot down and say, you know, should we continue to upgrade this legacy system that's been around, where we know all of these things are true? We know we need to get off of it. We know we need to reduce costs, and start new from a modern platform, or are we going to go ahead and upgrade it? We've got to make that call. So what exactly is a legacy system, just to start off with, so that we're clear on kind of what we're talking about? This is a slide I borrowed from one of my older presentations, but it kind of really calls to mind a lot of things that organizations are looking at and have in common with these systems. Bing defines legacy in the context of software as denoting or relating to software or hardware that has been superseded but is difficult to replace because of its wide use. And that really says a lot right there. It's superseded because it's old. It's not supported anymore. And it's difficult to replace because it's being used, and people are saying, you know, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. You know, it still works. Can we just keep it around? It's going to cost too much. But that's what we mean by a legacy system. You know, and in many times, it becomes problematic because of a number of things. Outdated technologies is one of the big ones, and we'll talk a little bit about that today in some of the questions that I pose. You know, things like Java versions, or apps that use thick Windows clients, or maybe they don't have mobile support. Maybe they don't allow collaboration as you would like to, with external parties even so. Or maybe they use proprietary scripting languages and APIs that are hard to use, hard to find support for personnel that can help with that. Maybe they don't fulfill your current business needs like they used to. And of course, as we already mentioned, the upgrade processes are there. You've got to continue to perform these upgrades, oftentimes every 12 to 18 months. We've got a customer that recently told us that it cost them $250,000 to upgrade one of their two OpenText systems every 18 months. And that's in addition to the maintenance costs that they were spending for that system. So that really factored into some of their decisions to finally make the call and get off of the old system and go through a full digital transformation onto a new platform. And that ROI can be justified, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Lastly, you know, sometimes the legacy system doesn't really allow you to do what you really want to do with respect to your governance goals or your strategies with respect to information governance. So our first poll here, are you planning a legacy system retirement for next year? Or maybe later this year or next year? And we'll go ahead and wait to see these results. Okay, so the majority said yes, or I'm not sure. And maybe those that are not sure will benefit from some of the material that I'm going to present today. So that's good. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. So we've already started talking about kind of legacy systems and some of the concerns there, but let's focus in on some of the main items that we're seeing. You know, organizations are worried about the underlying hardware, or analyzing kind of what that looks like, you know, when they've got an old system that's been around for a while. Hardware has a limited lifespan. You know, at some point in time, you outgrow the servers that are running your applications. And In many cases, when you're a large enterprise, that's not just one server, it's 4, 5, 6 or more to run all of the various servers that are part of a full service or full functionality ECM system, for example. Maybe the software specs for the newest software version that you're looking at doing an upgrade to state that your current hardware doesn't meet the minimum requirements anymore. So you know you're going to have to do something there. Maybe you've looked and your vendor, maybe they don't have a viable cloud strategy for their software platform. Maybe it doesn't work for you. That's part of the factors you've got to weigh in this. Maybe the vendor's been acquired one or more times, and you're not sure the future of their platform or support. Maybe you reviewed the release notes for the latest version of the software, and you're concerned because maybe your hardware's okay, but you realize that you haven't upgraded in a while and you're 3 or 4 versions back. And so you can't really upgrade directly to the latest version. We've seen that happen a number of times. On top of that, maybe you've got to upgrade your operating system because the release notes say that you need to be at a certain level. In the database as well, we've seen companies that have had to go through multiple steps to upgrade, including upgrading multiple steps of the database because they've waited so long that they can't just upgrade the database and then upgrade the software on top of that, because the previous version that they haven't upgraded to yet doesn't support the newest database that they want to go to. So it can get really nasty. Also, things like integrations. If the software's been around a while, there's a good chance that you've done some integration work and you're tying some applications, some line of business apps together, and you're wondering whether or not they're going to work after you do the upgrade. And that's a big consideration. These are all really good points and concerns, and they're things that we see very common with companies that we've talked with that have kept legacy ECM systems around for a long time and haven't paid as much attention to them as they should have. They use the old adage, it isn't broke, so don't fix it, just leave it. It's working for us, let's leave it as it is. And that can eventually catch up to you. So let's look at some other considerations, some key considerations that are part of this decision that you're going to have to make. We've talked about what's involved in upgrading. We've talked about hardware and the operating system and the underlying database from the previous slide. You know, the database is a good one. It's a big one, and I'll mention something else again with respect to that. We actually had a government client that had an issue of moving off of 2012, and because of supported other supported applications. And so you've got to consider not only what you're using in your ECM database, but is there anything else using that same database? So it can be something you have to be careful with. But let's look at some other things as well as the hardware and software bits. Do you have the right personnel in-house with the skills to perform the tasks? Do you have access to personnel that you know can help with this? If the platform is old enough, or maybe you acquired a company that had this platform previously and you don't have anyone around that knows how to manage anything about the platform, you might be in trouble there, and you might not be as easy to find people as you think. And even if you do, then you're looking at potentially this being a significant cost, and it could be a recurring cost if you're deciding to do upgrades and you having to do them every 12 to 18 months to stay on top of things. Next is the application and the business requirements. You know, you implemented this software a while back, and maybe it met the requirements at the time, but does it still meet the requirements that you need it to meet now? And Furthermore, will performing an upgrade help you make your current business processes or the business requirements that you have, will it help with that? Will it make them more efficient? Think about the older legacy silo type ECM repositories that exist now and existed in the past. How many users did you actually roll the system out to? Most of those types of systems were kind of niche or departmental, or were implemented as such, and then maybe kind of gradually extended into other parts of your organization. If that's the case, you may be kind of shocked to see how many actual users you have of that system. Is it really worth upgrading for that number of users? Most legacy systems just never penetrated in an organization to a large number of desktops, as opposed to cloud technologies these days. Think about Microsoft 365. If you're a Microsoft 365 client and you've got that rolled out in your organization, it's touching likely every single desktop in your organization in some way, and that's huge. So we talked about line of business integrations. Will the existing integrations that you've spent money to implement continue to work after you do an upgrade? And is there a way to know? Is there a way to test that prior to doing a full upgrade? Do you have a test or a staging or an alternate stack that you can test these upgrades on? If not, what happens if they don't work? That's a consideration, and is often a big consideration for some of our customers. Next, does your platform provide a future-proof foundation for your information governance and records management goals and objectives? Is it going to meet your strategies, your forward-looking strategies for how you want to manage information and govern your information and perform records management? And if maybe some of you don't have strategies or don't have insights into that future forward-looking goals and objectives, and that's something that you probably should be thinking about from an overall strategy perspective, because that's going to enable you to make better decisions around the platform, knowing kind of where you need to be or where you want to be. Next is with regards to maturity. And a lot of organizations go through an exercise, called a maturity assessment, and evaluate their maturity in a variety of information management related categories, to understand kind of where you are, what's your existing position relative to industry standards. Are you in each of these categories with respect to managing information and your information management processes and procedures and policies? Are you operating at an ad hoc or a chaotic level? Are you managing things appropriately and able to measure how you're making progress on things? Are they automated? Are you able to do things in a repeatable way with respect to operating your information management platform? And then, does the existing platform provide you with the necessary foundation to take you to the next level and to start to optimize your information management operations and your policies and your procedures, versus just staying where you are? Maybe you've got a good handle on the data and you've got a good handle on the management and things are working okay, but what's it going to take you to proactively get to the next level and continue to optimize your processes to be more cost effective? And then finally, we've talked about upgrade plans and the cycles that are involved in that. When you've got your own software, you got to go through upgrade cycles, typically every 12 to 18 months to stay on top of things, and that can be very costly. Okay, we've talked around a couple of these ideas on this slide, but let's talk about information governance. Are are your information governance objectives being met? Does the existing platform support those objectives? If your platform's really old, it's likely that you need to evaluate, if you were to choose to upgrade, you probably should evaluate if there are some other changes that you should be making to the platform to continue to support your information governance objectives, if that's even possible. So when you're thinking about it, does it meet your information management goals? Things like your information architecture, the metadata that you're collecting on information that's stored in your repository. Does it still make sense? Is it still aligned with your business requirements? What about search, findability of information, security, things like data privacy, data loss prevention, etc.? What are you doing with all of those? Does the existing platform provide a good foundation for that? What about records management? I mean, does your existing platform provide you with a compliant and defensible records management foundation? Are you able to manage and dispose of information appropriately according to your retention requirements? Are you able to manage your records in place? Are you having to do it centralized? How many different other repositories are you managing electronic records in? Those are all considerations. Can your users still find and search and store information in the existing platform? Is it enabling them to do their work? What about the technology in general, in its support for helping you extend that platform maybe to other new business requirements? Does it present roadblocks when you try to do this? Whenever you're trying to change a business process, or whenever you're trying to add a new technical capability or an integration to a new line of business application, is it presenting you with problems with dealing with proprietary technologies or scripting languages? And again, the skills that are required to maintain that, are you having trouble getting or keeping people with those skills? And then lastly, here, is it enabling collaboration between your users and the different groups of users you have, or is it standing in the way of productivity? Is it a roadblock? So let's focus in and talk about some of the benefits of moving to a cloud-based platform. We talked a lot about elimination of hardware concerns, the issues with the hardware and the software and all the supporting pieces that you have to maintain. That's a big one. No more continuous upgrades. You don't have to keep doing that. You don't have to keep managing the software, the hardware, all the supporting technologies that go along with that. About security, does your organization have an organization that's focused on security and cyber attacks? Maybe some of the cloud vendors, for example, Microsoft and others, have become experts in dealing with managing cyber attacks and security. How do you measure up to that? Are you able to match that? And is it something you really want to be having to concern yourself with? Or continue to concern yourself with an on-prem platform? That kind of goes away to a certain extent when you start to leverage these cloud platforms, because it's baked into the solution. No more continuous upgrades and maintenance cycles and the associated costs that go along with that. You've already licensed a platform. Likely you've already licensed M365 and you're just waiting for the on-ramp. You're paying for that. So why continue to pay for a system? If that is the case, why continue to pay for two systems where one of them is redundant? You've got multiple systems storing content. There's also a lot more widely available support and personnel for modern day technology platforms. Using the Microsoft 365 example, there are many more Microsoft skilled technicians, developers, architects, administrators than you're going to find for some of the older legacy platforms. Just because of the nature of these technologies, they're more prevalent now. And so there's no need to understand those proprietary vendor coding languages or technologies once you've gotten rid of that. A fully integrated platform from the start, something like Microsoft 365, you don't have to worry about tying all the pieces together. You get Office, you get SharePoint, you get Teams, you get all of those pieces that are part of the platform, and they're all already working together. They're architected to work together on a common platform without a whole lot of headaches. You get that off the shelf with these cloud platforms. And Microsoft 365 may have already been declared the standard, industry standard, the standard in your organization for managing information. It may have already been declared. It's just you're trying to figure out how to move forward and get off of some of these apps and trying to make the business case or make the case to make the move. Since it's already a standard and since it's probably already implemented in some level, that's going to enable more rapid adoption and minimize your change management for moving towards that. So the impact to the users may be a lot more minimum than you would expect. And of course, there's the cost savings from decommissioning redundant technology platforms. You're going to save money. You're going to get rid of those mini servers that you've got in the OS and all of the ancillary software that was part of that, and the upgrades and the maintenance. It's all going to go away from that redundant platform. And then, I mentioned, things working together. There's seamless off-the-shelf integrations with, most popular business applications. A lot of applications that are standard business applications, line of business applications inside organizations have already pre-built integrations with the more popular cloud platform offerings. So there is not as much need for customization. Most of it would be configuration. And then again, if there is a need for customization, you've got the ability to find resources a lot easier to support that. Just a quick glance, take a look at, for example, Microsoft 365 and the breadth of the services and apps that are provided as part of that platform. It's like a Swiss Army knife. You've got things like OneDrive and Office for content creation, Teams and SharePoint for collaboration, the Power Platform for process automation, Security and Compliance Center for information governance, and even Cortex for AI. And so there's a lot that just comes with the platform that can be leveraged to help make the case. So let's look at some other things. We've kind of alluded to some of these, but these are definitely really important in kind of making the case or helping to make a decision. And that's looking at some of these strategic goals. These are some of the recommendations we would have and some of the additional questions you could ask yourself. Review your organization's existing information management policies, goals, and objectives. How are you doing at meeting these goals? Do you have an information governance program or similar function in your organization? Maybe you don't. Maybe that's something that you need to look into, something that can oversee the creation of these policies and these goals. And from a strategic perspective, start to chart a course, your roadmap for your digital transformation or for moving to the cloud and for getting off of some of these legacy platforms. Review your existing organization's maturity in information management, information governance areas. Determine what needs are to support your continuous movement or evolution from your current position to where you'd like to be. If you're at kind of an ad hoc and reactive place in managing information and following information management policy and processes, maybe you would like to be more proactive in your approach and start to manage things and measure so that you can change. and optimize your processes. How is your organization managing information life cycles and records disposition? Are you just not destroying anything? Are you using an effective records management product or solution to give you compliant records retention and disposition functionality that is defensible in the case that something comes up? Do you have information stored in several disparate repositories or location? Your strategic goals probably should include looking at rationalizing these to minimize the number of silos. And we understand that it's not practical to move overnight and reduce everything down to one. Sometimes it's not possible because of certain niche applications that are used in your organization, but you should definitely be looking to minimize where possible, where there isn't a specific business need to keep some of these silos operational. What about other business requirements that are unique that you need to continue to support? Maybe external collaboration. How are you doing with that? You deal with external parties where you need to share and exchange information. Can you do that with your existing platform? Or is there a need to do that? What about archiving? Maybe from SAP. Do you need to manage content better that's currently stored in maybe an OpenText Content Server platform behind your SAP, but that's the only thing that you're using it for? Does it make sense, since you've got SharePoint, you've got M365, maybe it makes sense to migrate that information and start archiving your SAP content into SharePoint? What about scanning and capture? Is that part of your requirements? Do you need that? Those kind of functions have become more commoditized. There's no longer a need to get that directly from your ECM vendor the way it used to be. There's a lot of companies that offer those types of solutions that are well integrated with many of the popular platforms. And then line of business application integrations. Everybody's got something tied together, and so kind of how are you handling that, and what are your requirements around that? You should continue to analyze that. Then lastly, are you paying for software that you don't need? A lot of times in the past, people have implemented software and it's met specific needs, and as time went by, they stopped using various features, and now they've gotten to a point where really they're just using it as a dumping ground, and they're just storing files in a folder, and they're not using any of the other functionality that once they used and once was important, because they've transitioned that to other platforms. We've seen a number of customers fund new records management projects with the cost savings from retiring a single platform. We've seen it multiple times, and we can help make that case. The answer to all of these questions should all be a part of your decision-making process, because they're really important in that aspect for what you'll need to do with your existing platform, should you stay on it, or your new platform, should you move. So where do I start? So here's kind of a summary in our recommendations for how to get through this. Evaluate your existing platform. Understand what you will really need to do to upgrade. We talked about all of those headaches for upgrading hardware and software, and upgrading 3 times and having to upgrade the database and the OS and change to new hardware. You've got to understand really where you are first. Then revisit and analyze your existing business requirements, your current business requirements, to ensure that upgrading would support your current needs if you were to stay on that solution. Then next, ensure that the future platform, the 2B solution, whether it's the existing platform that you would upgrade or a new one, make sure it'll support your organization's continuous growth. It can't just support you now. It's got to be a platform that can support you into the future and provide a platform for meeting your information management, governance, and records management needs as well. And then go through the exercise, calculate your ROI and compare your costs. Look at what it would cost to upgrade, all of those hardware, whether it's, physical servers or virtual machines, the software, the upgrade time, and the associated costs to perform the upgrade. What about the consultants you're going to need to pay to do that? Understand what that is. Understand the cost of continuing to pay for software licenses and maintenance on that as well. That all adds up. And then compare that to the cost of a migration and a shift to a new cloud platform. And lastly, make a plan. Keep it simple is the acronym I use, and you don't have to do it all in one fell swoop. You don't have to make the move all at once. The best plans usually take it into small chunks and plan it out over time. And I hope that these considerations and ideas can help you in analyzing your current situation and help you make a decision to get to where you want to be. And I'm going to talk briefly about some of our solutions before handing it back to Shana. If you're not familiar with Gimmal, we do offer a wide variety of information governance software solutions around records management, both electronic and physical electronic management. We have got a product called Gimmal Link that manages content related to SAP in SharePoint without interrupting the end user's experience in SAP. We've got file analytics and analysis software in our Gimmal Discover product that help you remediate and discover content sources that maybe you don't understand a whole lot about. And then we've finally got Gimmal Migrate, which is a migration tool to help you migrate off of products like OpenText Content Server or Documentum or a file share into SharePoint Online or Microsoft 365. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shana.
Yeah, thanks, John. This was very much an educational type of webinar, but if you were hoping to hear more about our solutions, or if you'd like more information on generally how we can help you move off of a legacy system, whether it's advice, consulting, or you just want to have a conversation with John, you should see a poll question pop up there on your screen. You just answer yes or no, not at this time. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know we are about 8 minutes over the time that this webinar was supposed to end. I'm going to read just one Q&A question, and then we'll answer any other questions via email if you decide to send them in. So just a question regarding what a maturity assessment is, or maturity model, John.
A good question. I talked a little bit about that maybe after the question was asked. But so a maturity model is basically a structured collection of categories to help organizations measure how they are managing aspects of their information management systems across a variety of categories or capabilities. So, the elements may incorporate things like standards around enterprise taxonomy or retention or governance or information management charter or information ownership, information lifecycle, things like that, as well as covering things like how you're managing your storage of information and your sources, the systems. And then additionally can cover things like your processes, e-discovery or holds, records management, records retention, search, BPM, all of those things. And what it does is the model presents a set of questions and a set of statements that help you measure where your organization is with respect to each of those things. Like it'll ask you, do you have a retention schedule, or are you disposing of content? And it'll help you determine kind of where you are on a spectrum, whether it's initial, whether it's ad hoc or chaotic or repeatable or defined, or maybe it's just managed, or whether you are at the most optimal place and you are optimizing, you are going through a cycle where things are in really good shape. But what it also does, and what's really important about it, is that it gives you the capability to identify what you need to do as an organization to move from maybe that initial state, the lowest on the low end, to the more advanced state on the high end, the managed or the optimized state, and what kind of activities you can do in each of those areas to get you to the best state for that category.
Great. With that, if you could go over to the next slide, if you can think of any other questions after this, both John and my email addresses are on the next slide, just our names at gimmal.com. If that is too hard to remember, on the next slide, you can always just send us an email, info@gimmal.com, or visit our website, www.gimmal.com. If anybody has any interest in seeing the recording of this webinar, it will be available via a thank you for attending email between 24 to 48 hours. If there are any ARMA international members on this webinar right now, we hope to see you at ARMA InfoCon next week. But with that, we will give you the rest of your day back. Have a great one.